All right, let's hear from somebody who has his finger on the pulse of the campaign of these different races, state by state. This is a man who knows what's up, friends. Ned Ryan, founder of American Majority, friend of the show. He is in the mix. Ned, great to have you back.
Yeah, no, good to be back with you, Buck. Very interesting times that we live in, and 5 days away from the biggest election, I think, in U.S. history.
How are we looking, Ned? I mean, really give us the real deal on this one. I mean, I know, you and I can both sit here and say, MAGA, Trump, but which is great. But how's this actually going to shake out?
Well, I mean, first of all, I was just actually looking at early in-person voting numbers in Florida, and really kind of fascinating dynamic that's taking place in Miami-Dade right now, Buck. This is a county that Hillary won by 30 points in 2016, then obviously lost the state. So this is a county that Republicans shouldn't win anything in at any time, anywhere. And they just extended their lead in early in-person voting by 7,000 votes, which is a really stunning occurrence. Now, they're still behind, obviously. I don't expect Republicans to win the overall vote in Miami-Dade. But if they're going to mitigate Joe Biden's win in that county significantly, I think, over where Hillary won, which is obviously huge implications for the overall state as it stands. So I honestly think that in many ways, Florida might be off the table, might be going into Trump's column, just looking at the trends of what's taking place. Do I think it's going to be a blowout? No, of course not. Do I think that Trump's in the driver's seat in Florida? I do. And then I go down the map. I got to tell you, that decision yesterday in North Carolina extending the vote, deeply disappointing. Of course, I would remind people that the votes have to be postmarked before Election Day and have to be in by 5 p.m. on November 12th. But still, this idea that we're extending Election Day into election weeks is a little troubling because Trump does have to win North Carolina. I look at Arizona. Surprisingly, I think Trump is probably going to win, but also might be able to pull McSally across first. He's got to win by 4 or 5 points in Arizona. But the interesting thing, Buck, in all of this, Trump not only has to win the White House, Republicans have to keep the Senate. They absolutely have to. And if he wins the White House and they take the Senate and keep the House, I mean, we are in for a disastrous 4-year second term for Trump. So he knows he's got to keep the Senate. So that's why I'm addressing some of the Senate races as I go through this. So he's got to win Arizona, I think, by 4 to 5 points to pull McSally across first. I think he can win Arizona. Is he going to win it by that much? I don't know. I think the jury's still out, but I'm seeing some good trends in Maricopa County, which is essentially Phoenix. So I'm optimistic he can pull Arizona out. I just don't know about the Senate. I'll tell you the interesting one.
Tell me about some of the big. Tell me about some of the big Senate races other than McSally that we need to be focused in on as well, because you make a very important point. Because I think the Senate, if they have a simple majority, they're going to get rid. The Democrats will get rid of the filibuster if they keep the House, and now they effectively are just going to be lobbing legislative bombs at the White House all day. That's not going to be for at least a happy 2 years for Trump's second term, maybe a really crappy 4.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think they'll move to impeachment again. I think they will go down the impeachment path if they have the House and the Senate. It would be an absolute disaster. I mean, you got to look at North Carolina, Tom Tillis. Obviously, with some of the Sexton scandal, I like Tillis's chance of holding on in North Carolina. You move up to Michigan. John James is running an extremely strong race coming down the home stretch. It's making Democrats extremely nervous. They're having to spend a lot more time there, spend a lot more money. I saw Trafalgar poll put John James in a narrow lead. They've also put Donald Trump in a narrow lead in Michigan. So you got to look at Michigan. The one that's making me a little nervous in the Senate race is honestly Joni Ernst in Iowa. She is in for a fight of her life. It is neck and neck. We've got to have Joni win that. I think Susan Collins is pretty much gone in Maine, but she's not out of it. And I'm not a fan of Susan Collins, but we could use her vote for a majority and keeping the majority and keeping the Senate in the right hands. Some of the other stuff I'm looking at too, though, but going back to battleground states, I've come to the conclusion, Buck, we've got to win Florida. Ohio's off the map. I think it's in Trump's favor. We've got to win North Carolina. We've got to win Arizona. We've got to win Iowa. And then it becomes an issue of the upper Rust Belt states. I feel really good about Michigan. And then I looked at the polls yesterday. We've got teams working with American Majority Action in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Virginia. So I was talking with some of my Wisconsin guys yesterday. And they literally said if the Marquette poll comes out today and showing Trump within 5 to 6 points, he's going to win the state. Well, guess what the Marquette poll showed? 3 to 4 points favoring Biden. So they think that that actually is a really good sign for Trump, because Hillary was up 6 points in that poll coming into the final week of Election Day, and she ends up losing the state. So we're seeing some good trends in Wisconsin
Did you
and
see
Michigan.
That? I gotta ask you, Ned. I mean, just because you brought up Wisconsin, because I talked about this yesterday on the show. There's a poll that says Biden's up 17 in Wisconsin. I mean, how can anyone take this stuff seriously?
They can't. I think at some point we're going to have a conversation after the election about some of these polls that are really. And I have two theories on this book really quick. One is that some of these polls, again, that was an ABC Washington Post poll. It's an attempt at voter suppression. But I think even more troubling, I have a theory that if Trump is able to win, and I do think he'll be able to win on Tuesday night, we might have to wait a couple of days to have it confirmed. They're going to use some of these bogus polls as justification for the rioting and for the looting and for literally a color revolution calling for regime change. So the polls are very dangerous in two regards: the voter suppression and also justification for the chaos and sowing dissension post-election. And we have to have a conversation about the polling moving forward. And I tell people all the time. I look at Trafalgar, I look at Rasmussen, I'm looking at Susquehanna, and I'm looking at IBD TIP, which are some of the more accurate polls from 2016, and now I think are probably more accurate in 2020 than the rest. I feel pretty optimistic. We've got to win. So going back to the battleground states, I think we've only got to win one of the upper Rust Belt states. We can lose Pennsylvania, but we've got to win either Michigan and Wisconsin, one of those two, for Trump to get across the finish line first. And I feel pretty confident that he's going to be able to pull it off.
Speaking of Ned Ryan, founder of American Majority, a guy who knows the political scene, the map, the battlegrounds, as well as anybody out there. Pennsylvania, Ned, I'm staking my prognostication ability on Pennsylvania being tight. I think it goes for Trump, but I also feel like people will look back at it. I've been saying it's the Keystone State, and it's the keystone to the election. What are you seeing there?
I won't disagree with you, Buck. I will say this to encourage the listeners. We don't have to win Pennsylvania for Trump to actually get over 270 electoral votes. That all to say, I sure as heck would like to see Pennsylvania in Trump's column. The things that give me pause, though, on him being able to win Pennsylvania, first of all, the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania, utter disaster in destroying the integrity of the vote, obviously extending it multiple days that the Supreme Court has now agreed with past Election Day to count the absentee ballots. But now their unanimous decision that signatures don't actually have to match on the ballot. Just the integrity of the vote, I think, is in many ways shattered in Pennsylvania. And then I remind people, too, in Philadelphia, those precincts, and I'm going to be curious to know how the Philadelphia riots are going to throw this off at all, if any. The Philadelphia precincts, I would not be surprised, Buck, if we see some of those precincts coming out on Election Day at 100 to 110% voter turnout, which is, of course, absurd and ridiculous. So I tell people this: because of some of these state Supreme Court decisions being upheld by the Supreme Court, because of the ridiculousness that takes place in some of these Philadelphia precincts, I think it's going to be hard for Trump to win Pennsylvania. But if he does, great. I think obviously it will just be a little extra whipped cream on top of the pie.
But so just so I'm clear, if he doesn't win Pennsylvania, he does have to win Michigan, Wisconsin, right? He's got to pull some of those states.
He's just got to win one of those. He's just got to win Michigan in my electoral college. He's obviously got to win Iowa and Arizona in my calculations. But if he wins Arizona and Iowa and pulls in North Carolina, he doesn't need Pennsylvania. He's got to win Michigan or Wisconsin. I'd like to see him win both just to give him a little extra padding. But, the other thing I'll point out, too, is this, Buck. We've got people in Minnesota. They have told me if he can overperform, if Minnesota 7 can overperform, Jason Lewis, who's the Senate candidate, is within 1 point in multiple polls. Michelle Fischbach, who's running in Minnesota 7, if Trump will go in, and he's going into Rochester on Friday into Minnesota 1, I'd like to see him bounce up to Minnesota 7. If we can overperform in Minnesota 7, you might see a surprising Senate win, and you might see another surprising state for Trump. We'll see.
And Ned, I know you also do a fair amount of appearances on Tucker's show. And today, people are looking at this statement last night where Tucker explained that they sent documents about the Hunter Biden emails. I'm just wondering, do you even have a theory? I mean, I know Tucker's staff. You do too. I know that show. We both know Tucker. individually, professionally. And
Right.
if they say it's so with this, I 100% believe them, meaning that the facts as they've laid them out. What do we think happened here?
Am I allowed to share a conspiracy theory?
Yes.
My,
I can't even come up with a theory.
Well, my theory is that honestly, I think there might be some phones being tapped. This seems extremely well coordinated. My hope is, Buck. I mean, before I go too deep into my conspiracy theory, I hope that there were copies made. I think there have been somewhere that there are copies of some of this information that was lost, stolen in the mail from UPS. So I think that this kind of highlights the fact that I think there has been maybe some phone tapping going on. There's something a little screwy about how well it was known, the timing, where it was being mailed, what to track, all of these things. I mean, but I don't want to sound too conspiracy theorist here, Buck, but we're up against some pretty powerful forces, people that do not want Donald Trump to win, people that do not want Joe Biden to lose, people that do not want inconvenient truths to come out in the last few days that could be devastating to Biden's candidacy. And it's a lot of powerful forces inside the administrative state, inside the media, a lot of people that want us to snap back to the status quo. And so you hate to go down the path of thinking maybe phones are being tapped, maybe somebody's tracking, maybe somebody's stealing these packages, but very curious sequence of events that seem a little hard to explain away, that it suddenly just disappeared, and that somebody without a plan and without forethought decided to open a package full of documents that could be incriminating, and they just disappear.
One more for you, Ned. Do you think that the Hunter Biden email story, especially with the Bobolinsky interview that was on Fox News earlier in the week, and the story is out there. I know the media is trying to suppress it, but everybody knows about this, right? Everyone knows what's happened. They're just not trying to. They're acting like they don't know on the left and the Democrat media, which is unfortunately 95% of the media.
That's right.
Have you seen any data that suggests that this whole Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, China payoff email scam is moving the needle?
I don't have any hard proof, Buck. Anecdotally, I think it's giving some people pause. I mean, part of the problem is I was just doing my own podcast today in which I was explaining, there are a lot of people that have already voted. There's not as many undecideds this time around. Obviously, there are a lot of harder lines in 2020 than even in 2016. Do I think that it's going to impact some votes? Yes. Do I think that it's going to impact as many as people think? No, I don't. But even, again, Buck, though, to give perspective, even if it impacts 1 to 2% of the people voting in battleground states, it's enough for me. That could totally swing a state in the right direction. So I do think it'll have an impact, but I couldn't give you hard evidence as to how many votes or what percentage of voters will be impacted by it. But I will say this. I mean, the media is doing their best, along with big tech, to drown out the story. But when you hear anecdotally people are talking about Hunter Biden in coffee shops in California, you know that the story has broken through despite the media and tech's attempts to silence it.
Ned Ryan, everybody, of American Majority, the founder of American Majority. Ned, my friend, great to see you, man. Let's hope we have you back to celebrate together on the show.
I hope so. Thanks, Buck.
Despite millions, if not billions of dollars of fossil fuel money and lobbying and media campaigns to smear the Green New Deal, a majority of people still believe in this country that a Green New Deal is the right way forward.
Nope. That's clearly not true. But AOC doesn't care. That's who's going to be pushing the national political conversation more than I think any other figure in a Biden administration, as terrifying as that is. It'll go from AOC to Kamala, AOC to the media to Kamala, and then Biden will just go, okay, yeah, Green New Deal. No joke. The Green New Deal's the thing the American people want, period. That's what you're going to be hearing. Get ready for that, even though it's flatly insane. I mean, the people that are really talking about this, we're going to transition from fossil fuels. Why? What? Are you give me a break. The whole thing makes no sense. We are, and I always have to say this, and I feel like I repeat it maybe even too often now, but We are naturally transitioning away from more CO2 emission intensive fuel sources, and we have been for over 100 years. That's the natural trajectory that we're already on, and the market, and it's all happening. But just like Mao, they want to do a great leap forward for the Green New Deal, and that didn't work out well for China. It didn't work out well for China, and it's not going to work out well for us if we allow these radical leftists to get their way with that. They also don't want to allow us to peaceably enjoy this new judiciary that we're going to have thanks to Trump, even if Joe Biden wins, which I know I don't want to say it. It makes me sad too, but it's possible. Guys, I've been telling you all along, this election is going to be very tight. Very tight. I've been saying I think 272 to 262 is going to be the final electoral college map. Trump wins 272 to 262. So Bruce and Mark, we can notch that one as my official electoral college prediction, and we can revisit it next week. That's a very tight election, obviously, and I certainly hope that I'm correct in this one. I'd even say so, and we can add to that my other prediction that we're not going to even know on election night. I think we're going to be, looking at this a couple of days after the election before we can finally declare, because I think it's going to come out of Pennsylvania. That's what I think is going to happen. We'll see. Wouldn't it be great if I was wrong? Isn't that fun though? Wouldn't it be great if I was wrong and Pennsylvania is a 3 or 4 point solid win for Trump instead of what it. Ned Ryan's very confident, much more confident than I am, I should say, about Wisconsin and Michigan. I don't see it, but he's looking at a lot of polls. I just look at a few of them every day, so maybe. But back to judges. We're not allowed to enjoy the judges, according to Senator Coons here. Play 22.
But we got to look at our federal courts as a whole, Rachel, because we've seen hundreds of conservative judges put on circuit courts and district courts all over this country in the last 4 years. In many cases, too young, too unqualified, and too far right to be allowed to sit peaceably without our re-examining the process, the results, and the consequences.
There we go. They want to remove some of these Trump judges. They're going to agitate for that. They're going to try to impeach them. You wait. It's going to happen. If you think the Democrats have been crazy while Trump has been president and they have had limited political power, just wait until what they're willing to do when they think they have a mandate of a narrow, 1% overall vote victory for Joe Biden, if that happens. Which is why we can't let it happen, folks. Get out there. Do everything you can do. Everyone's got a role in this fight. Get out there. Get friends. Get family. Post on your Facebook. Do what you got to do. Make sure people get out there and vote for Trump.
It's time for roll call.
Roll call, everybody. Facebook.com/Buck Sexton. TeamBuck@iHeartMedia.com if you want to email us, or you can send us a message on the gram, Instagram, Buck Sexton. I got to start upping my TikTok game, too, because now apparently conservatives are allowed to be on TikTok. Yay. So, a couple of updates. One, Dracula podcast going up tonight. Going up tonight, friends, as promised. It'll be done before midnight Eastern time. That I can promise you. So, and hopefully many hours before that. But certainly it'll be up tonight. The Dracula podcast. The real Dracula. It's straight up history. Incredible stuff. Dracula was a figure on the front lines of Christian, Muslim, Ottoman, Christendom warfare of the 15th century. This guy was raised in the Ottoman court, became a friend, essentially, of the guy who then became the Sultan, the most powerful man in the world at the time, learned all of the Turkish ways. Remember, Turkey was the most powerful. It was called the Ottoman Empire, but, what is in modern-day Turkey was the most powerful military and political and economic entity in the world at the time. Certainly in the Western world, maybe you could talk about China, but, the Ottoman Empire, no one could match the size of the military they could put in the field, and they were trying to conquer Europe. They were going to make their way up the Danube River First was going to be Belgrade, the fortress of Belgrade. They tried to take that. Then next would be Budapest in modern Hungary, and then beyond that, Vienna. And as we know, they made it to the gates of Vienna twice, trying to. If they had been able to take Vienna, the idea would be then to continue to use the Danube as a highway of resources and reinforcement, and then push further and further. They would have made it all the way to the. They would have made it all the way to the coast of France, and after that, who knows? That was the plan. That's what the Sultan wanted to do. And one guy standing in the way in the middle of the 15th century, right after the fall of Constantinople, too, which was a huge blow to the Christian forces, was Vlad Tzepes, Vlad III, better known as Dracula. And the stories, the way this guy was able to stay in power, get into power 3 different times, actually, as the prince, essentially, but the leader of Wallachia, which was the province that he actually spent the most time in. Transylvania is often associated with him. And the battles that he fought, and he was involved in turning back 100,000 person. He was the leader who turned back 100,000 person invasion force of the Turks, which people thought was just going to be impossible, right? How could you stop this? I mean, this would be like some small country stopping the Nazi blitzkrieg with a force 1/10 the size of the German force, 1/5 the size of the German force. So it's an incredible story. And then, yes, also there's all the Strigoi, Romanian folklore, vampire history. I get into that, and then the atrocities that this guy committed. I mean, that's the other part of it too. He did love to impale people. I mean, he impaled thousands and thousands of people. An incredibly painful, gruesome, torturous form of execution, and he did it. They estimate 20 to 100,000 victims of Dracula. Yeah. This guy, he had them set up in the courtyard of his palace, and he would leave the bodies impaled. So people would come to see him, and there would be impaled bodies. And the tortures that he inflicted, even beyond impalement on people. I mean, it's really, some of the stuff I had to cut out from the research just because I can't even describe the kinds of mutilations and terrible stuff that he did. Look, it's a Halloween horror podcast in part 2, right? But I cut it out. So it's, you can have kids listen. It's not, there's nothing in it that's, there's no sexual stuff and nothing that's, I think, too graphic for kids to know about, as long as you're okay with them hearing about what impalement is, which they call this guy Vlad the Impaler for a reason. So I some of you I know are listening to this all across the country on our 180 radio stations. If you have not already, please just subscribe to a podcast wherever you do. Subscribe to the Buck Sexton Show, because this will be in the feed. It'll be under Shields High, The Real Dracula, and it's out tonight. And great listening for the Halloween weekend. You know, if you're somebody that's going to be doing a little bit of preparation at home for some pumpkins and candy and stuff with the kids, listen to the Real Dracula podcast, man, because it's some good stuff. I think you'll want to listen. Sorry, I couldn't help it. So let's get to roll call. Oh, but we got a producer Mark roll call I want to get to first. Mark, you're actually agreeing with me that de Blasio now, and you keep an even hand on politics and focus on other things mostly, but you agree de Blasio is the worst. Why is he the worst?
I can't imagine that any human being doesn't agree that de Blasio is worst. He has this way of uniting everybody.
That's
and we
true.
need a uniter. He unites Democrats and Republicans in hating him. And his latest thing that he's doing, and he's trying to... So the Mets are up for sale. They're about to be bought by Steve Cohen, who's a hedge fund billionaire. And I can't think of a word that's safe for radio. You know the 7 Dirty Words George Carlin sketch?
Mm-hmm.
All 7 of those words is what I'd like to call Bill de Blasio right now, but I can't. So use your imagination. He's trying to block the sale. Basically, there's something in the lease from Citi Field, which is on New York City property. So the mayor technically has to approve. It's a bunch of legal crap. And it seems like the New York Post is reporting that he told his legal team, find a way to block this. I don't want a billionaire to own the team, which is absolutely the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. The Post article also says that it's unlikely that this will end up happening, that even if he tries to block it, the Cohen's lawyers will end up, fighting him in court. But the problem here is for Mets fans is that's a month, 2 months, 3 months that Steve Cohen's not buying the team, not spending money on players and doing all that stuff. So Bill de Blasio is just a despicable human being and the worst politician ever.
Look, it's a social justice thing for him. Just doesn't like billionaires. Even though I know from, it's true on global sports, you know, you have some of the biggest soccer teams, football, but soccer teams in the world have been bought by billionaires, Russian and even Middle Eastern money, Russian money coming in. And it's made these franchises effectively super teams because guess what? They'll write whatever checks they have to, not just to buy the best players in the world, but also to make the stadium absolutely state of the art, to make just everything about it is upgraded because there's the money to do it. So I assume it would be like that with the Mets. It'd be a great thing for New York City, but
Steve Cohen would be the most rich owner in baseball by double. He would double the second most rich owner.
Yeah, and I know enough about professional sports to know you got a guy who's got literally billions to spare and could still be a billionaire.
Yes.
You're going to have a good team. You're going to pay for great players, great management, great training, great everything, and then you will have a great team. So
and the man grew up a Mets fan, and this is what Mets fans have been dreaming of forever. A Mets fan buying the team that has an unlimited checkbook.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about how much I would love it if that happened to the New York Knicks. You know, instead of the
Dolan. They do have a very rich owner, but he sucks.
But he's the worst. And he doesn't even really care about basketball. So it's gross. All right. So anyway, producer Mark laying it down on de Blasio, which I can never get enough de Blasio bashing because he deserves it. Pablo, first up in roll call. Hey, Buck, with the Bobulinski accusations with evidence out there, what happens if Joe Biden can't pass his security clearance? I was a submarine radio man on a boomer, and I know there was a significant background check for that. This is the President of the United States. Food for thought, shields high. Well, Pablo, very good question for which I have a very clear answer. If you are elected to office and that office comes with access to classified information, guess what? There is no security clearance. You just have one. That's right. The President of the United States is de facto chosen by the people. They trust him. There is no security clearance process for the president. Same thing with U.S. senators. Yeah, I know. Isn't that quite a thing? Same thing with members of the House of Representatives. They get a clearance. There may be some perfunctory stuff they do in the background, but trust me, for the president, I know for a fact you're cleared for everything if you're president. There's no limited, which is the way it should be. Can you imagine? Like, we're not going to. Well, actually, the Obama administration was taking that approach with James Comey, you remember, and D&I Clapper and all these other idiots. They didn't want to tell Trump certain stuff about Russia, even though he's the incoming president. How's that going to work? But there you had the deep state in action. But yeah, Pablo, no, it won't matter. Biden will have access to everything, and that also means he'll be able to cover up things and go on offense. The people that are telling these Hunter Biden tales right now, and they're true stories, I don't mean tales as in they're myths or anything, but those who are pushing this story, it's not above Joe Biden to have the IRS or the DOJ go after some of these people. Joe Biden's not above that. No, sir. I think it's actually very possible that he will want a little revenge for the fam. Yeah, get ready for that. All right, the roll call keeps on a rolling. PJ, gents, how do you feel about Trevor Noah? Heard yesterday about Colbert, so figured I would ask. Well, let me pose this one to Producer Mark first. Producer Mark, do you think Trevor Noah's funny?
I don't think I've ever watched his show once. I've only seen clips because I have to cut them for you.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Mark's answer on this one. And did you tell me you saw the new Borat, and it wasn't funny? Because I thought
did watch it because it's everywhere. I wanted to see what it was. There were a couple of moments that were funny, but it was mostly political. The first one was good. Granted, I was in middle school, but still, the first one was comedy. The first one was mostly
funny.
Political.
I mean, the first one had funny stuff, but I know all you have to tell me is that it's ruined. He's just trying to be woke, and woke is not funny. You can't be funny if you're woke. That's the problem that we see happening over and over again. Now we also you asked about Trevor Noah. No, he's not funny. I've never seen him do anything. I've never seen him say anything that is funny. He's got a staff of writers. He's not funny off the cuff. A lot of his jokes are cringeworthy, and he's really just a political commentator with jokes thrown in, but it's political commentary for the left and for libs. And he really took the Jon Stewart show in its day was a pretty powerful force because it was Jon Stewart was good at it. I give the guy credit; he was good at it. The whole thing was dishonest and it was lib propaganda, but it was amusing. Trevor Noah is not funny. And for my money, I mean, I've never watched the show in its entirety, but I've watched many segments because they will get political attention because of all the political commentary he does. All righty, next up here, John. Hey, Buck and Mark. You mentioned Natalie Holloway recently. I thought back on a funny story. My family and I went back to Aruba with 5 other families back in 2007 and stayed in an all-inclusive resort. Me and my buddy were hanging at the bar, and someone in our group told us no one could find one of the girls we were with. So there was a huge search party for 3 hours looking for her. Mind you, we had quite a bit of adult beverages in us, so me and my buddy gave up and got some food. Everyone got extremely upset at us because we didn't care. Turns out she was just drunk swimming by herself in the ocean at midnight, so we became pariahs for the next days. Thought it was interesting how you said Aruba is one of the safest places to vacation. That's what we thought at the time. Thanks, and Shields High. Yeah, John, the Natalie Holloway case became like this global phenomenon. You know, it's one guy, that guy, what was it, Joran van der Sloot, and is he dead? I think, did he get killed in prison or something? Something happened to that guy. Or did he kill somebody else? I don't know. The guy's bad news. But it looked like this guy, you know, may have killed the girl, and then the prosecutor was his dad and helped cover it up. I mean, that was the whole theory. So, yeah. Aruba is not a dangerous place at all. I've been. I love it. I'm probably going to go back as soon as I can. I think it's really, really nice. Beautiful beaches, very nice people. Simon, hey, Buck. With the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett in the books, I think it's possible the Democrats may concede the election after all, because a legal fight that ends in the Supreme Court will be shot down by the 5 conservatives. Of course, it's possible they may do it anyway just to cause chaos, but even they can probably see it won't be worth it. What do you think? Also, as a CIA analyst, what do you think of the Jack Ryan series on Amazon Prime? Accurate? Shields high? Well, Simon, I think that, yeah, maybe at the Supreme Court, it will go the way of Trump if the election comes down to that. But remember, the left is going to want to fight tooth and nail every step of the way to prevent a Trump victory. So I don't think they're going to concede. Why concede when they can fight and drive up more donations, and people will build names for themselves politically as #resistance. So no, I don't see that. And could be wrong, Simon, and as a CIA analyst, what do I think of the Jack Ryan series on Amazon Prime? The first season was entertaining, but not realistic at all. When I say realistic, I know it's a show, right? They're not going to show analysts like making coffee and, you know, going to the restroom and stuff. So I get it. It's not a documentary, but it was a little too, you know, 1 second he's an analyst, the next second he's at a black site. Now he's got, like, you know, terrorists breaking in and everything else. But it was entertaining. So I give it, the second season I bailed on because it was just so dumb. It was so bad. I got 3 episodes in. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Can't do it. Let's see. Jeff, I really enjoy your show. Recommend it to anyone who will listen. On the subject of the Biden family corruption, I think more attention needs to be paid to following the money. If Hunter and the rest of the family are obligated to give Joe 1/2 of the earnings, this would be reflected somewhere. A gift tax return, Form 709, would need to be filed if these dollars are being gifted to him. Otherwise, that is a crime as well. Biden claims he's given over all of his tax returns, but has he? I wish the media would do their job and investigate. Fox News shouldn't be the only firm digging into this. Mainstream media is making me sick. Keep up the good work. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for your support of the show and telling people about this show and how they can listen, which is so easy. You can just send, if you go on any of the podcast app or platforms, iHeartRadio app, Spotify, the Apple podcast store, You can just click link and share it to somebody. You can text it to them. You can email it to them. That's the best way you can get more people listening to the show, and I really appreciate it whenever someone does that. They're doing us a huge favor. And yeah, I wish other media outlets would do their jobs, but they won't, Jeff. But thank you for your support for the show. Make sure you guys look for that Dracula podcast out tonight. Dracula. You're going to love it. It's quality stuff. Shields high.